Hi everyone, how y'all doing? I got back recently from Eid vacation. The month of Ramadan ended, and here in the Middle East, you typically get a number of days for Eid al-Fitr, which is one of the two Eid holidays. So I always try to go somewhere for Eid since I get a number of days off work. And this time I decided to go to Bavaria and to Western Austria. I really wanted to go see Salzburg. I'd been to Austria before, but I'd never been out west to Salzburg. So I decided, well, let's see about going out there. But from Vienna, it was like 4 hours, I think, to get from Vienna to Salzburg. But then when I looked at the map, the city of Munich in Germany was actually really close by. I think like maybe an hour and a half to get to Salzburg, and I didn't realize that. And so I was like, well, okay, there's a direct flight to Munich, so why don't I just do that? Go see Salzburg, go around Austria a bit, then go back to Munich and see, parts of Bavaria before heading home. Now, you might be wondering why with my vacation videos, I don't actually take video while I'm there, like while I'm traveling, taking video of these places and showing the sights. Instead, just, showing pictures up here of what I did. And that's because, well, people who do that tend to be a bit annoying. Yeah, I don't want to be that type of person just roaming around giving these huge monologues to their camera and all this kind of thing. So I'm like, no. I'm more the type of person who just wants to like see what I'm looking at rather than filming it or taking tons of photos. Like if you go to a concert and like the first 5 rows or whatever are taken up with people all holding up their phones, going like this for the whole time. And it's like, dude, no one's gonna want to see your shaky hour-and-a-half video of some concert. Why are you doing that? I mean, I get it. You're at this concert, you maybe want people to know, you want to take a photo, take a couple of photos, take a selfie, take a couple of photos of the stage when the band's on or whatever, and then put the phone down and enjoy the show. And this is sort of my view with traveling. It's like, I don't want to take video of everything. I don't want to sit there the whole time, looking through a screen at what I'm supposed to be looking at. Excuse me. I'd rather just, enjoy it and, maybe try to keep it all up here and have some photos to remind me, I guess. So yeah, that's why I don't take live video of these things. I'm not up to creating yet another YouTube travel channel where influencers all roam around to wherever trying to make these travel videos. These things are a dime a dozen now. I think there's like zillions of these things everywhere. You could pretty much go on YouTube, look at any city, just type a city name in, and there'll be like 25 different people posting videos about the city roaming around. So that's why there's no video. So while I flew to Munich, actually from the airport, I went directly to Salzburg in Austria. And, before kind of getting into the specifics of Salzburg, I do just kind of want to know, if anyone from Bavaria or Austria just happens to stumble on this video at some point, how are you all not fat? I mean, pastries, beer, the food seems to be just very kind of meat, like lots of meat and, bread and stuff. Not a lot of vegetables, big portions. Sometimes you travel through Europe and you kind of think it'll be like these small European portions that you might get in like France or somewhere. No, not Germany. Germany does solid North American sized portions to everything. Okay, I get it. There's mountains, there's hills, and lots of exercise and all that. But yeah, not everyone can be climbing those hills all the time. How are y'all not big? You should be big, eating all that food. It was really nice, don't get me wrong, but proper Bavarian/Austrian food is heavy. So if you have any idea how y'all stay thin, just leave a comment. Just for my education, because I can tell you, I didn't lose any weight walking around Austria and Germany. So, getting back to Salzburg. Now, it turns out Salzburg really is a beautiful city. I didn't realize just how beautiful it would be. I just kind of assumed, okay, it's a very nice old city. I am not a huge fan of the movie The Sound of Music. I think I've seen it all about once. So, I wasn't going to Salzburg because I'm a Sound of Music fan and want to see wherever it was that it was filmed. I also didn't realize it was the birthplace of Amadeus Mozart. I just always equated Mozart with Vienna, and I didn't realize he grew up in Salzburg and did a lot of his early works in Salzburg before moving to Vienna. And of course, city, very big on Mozart. You go concerts, they'll play Mozart songs. He had, I think there was the home where he grew up in as a child, and as well as the family home later when he had moved to Vienna, but most of like his parents and his sister and so forth remained in Salzburg, and that home is also a museum. So yeah, they're very big on Mozart in Salzburg, and that's understandable. I mean, the guy was brilliant. But what I really liked was how the old city was still looked like in great condition, and the old streets were still there. The old churches were still there, and it made it very beautiful. One thing that surprised me about Salzburg, and I didn't realize this, is from a religious aspect. There are a number of churches in Salzburg, beautiful cathedrals and lovely churches. And you'd go in, you'd look around and all that. But of course, when you go in and you look around, you immediately like, oh, this one's Catholic, and all sorts of beautiful artwork and everything everywhere. And then you go to another one and it was Catholic. And then you went to another one and it was Catholic. And I was just kind of, wait a minute, shouldn't at least some of these be Lutheran? Because, Lutheranism basically started in Germany and spread heavily through the Germanic and Scandinavian areas of Europe. And there's lots of Lutheran churches in places like Switzerland and so forth. But I wasn't seeing anything. Well, looking at the history of Salzburg, I didn't realize that the ruler of Salzburg from about the 1300s to the early 1800s was actually the archbishop. It was not a family that did a dynastic rule from father to son to grandson and so forth. It was a series of archbishops. And they were, I think the title was Prince Archbishop of Salzburg. So the ruler of Salzburg was always a Catholic archbishop. And so, needless to say, they were not particularly fond of Protestants and Protestantism when it started coming out in the 1500s, and kept the city pretty staunchly Catholic, to the point where they were doing expulsions of Protestants periodically. Like, I guess a new archbishop would come along and he'd be way more intolerant of it, and they would literally, just gather Protestants and expel them from the territory kind of thing. And this went on until the early 1800s. Like, in the early 1800s, they were still like, oh, Protestants, get out of here, and driving them out. So Salzburg was a very Catholic city, and all the churches are Catholic. This does make for great tourism because, of course, Catholic churches tend to have a lot more to see. You have all the artwork and all the decoration and the paintings and all of that stuff. And sure, these churches were full of that. Lutheran churches, generally a little more sparse, a little lighter on the artwork. It's just, the way it is. Like, you can go to some was it a Lutheran church? I remember going to one in Amsterdam. I think it was Lutheran. And those walls were like bare. There was nothing. Deliberately, just white walls, no artwork, altar, that's it. They were very kind of big on not having lavish artwork and things. This is typical of some Protestant denominations, and it really contrasts against Catholic churches, which are very ornate and decorative. Now, overlooking the city is the old fortress. It is high up on a cliff/hill. Absolutely worth seeing, of course. There is a cable car that can take you up to the fortress, or you can, climb up various trails to get there. Do not climb it. I made that mistake. I regretted it. I mean, the weather was quite cool. It was, 13 degrees, 14 degrees. So heat wasn't a problem, but man, was it steep. And it's like you're halfway up and you're like, and you're resting all the time. Oh, no, forget it. Just take the cable car. Just make your life easier. It's a fantastic fort. I think the original fort is from 13th century, 14th century, and it expanded thereafter, and that's where the Archbishop lived. And, it, based on where it was sitting on a hill, it would be very difficult to have attacked because it's on top of basically a small mountain overlooking the city, beautiful views. I loved going to that. I also went to a concert, a four-piece orchestra who played a number of compositions over the course of the evening, including two pieces by Mozart, of course. And this was in the Mirabell Palace, which was a palace that was built much later on, I think in the 17 or 1800s. So it had more of that lavish kind of Versailles kind of look to it, as opposed to the fortress on the hill, with a little more medieval. And so you're sitting in this gorgeous hallway listening to a quartet playing classical music. You have to do something like that when you're going to a city like Salzburg. So that was really fun. I, of course, loved the food, as I already mentioned. Tried a lot of beer, tried a lot of schnapps, actually. I forgot about schnapps. That was a big thing. And gin. Typically, I'd associate gin with Britain, but when I was going to places, they would have a variety of gins. And one of the bartenders told me that maybe 15 or so years ago, gin suddenly became a thing in Austria. It kind of became a trend. And a lot of places in Austria started developing gins. Why, I don't know why that became a thing. Gin is really more of a British thing. So I was trying that as well. And of course, I had to go to the Sacher Hotel to have a famous Sacher tort at their cafe. The hotel has two locations, Vienna and Salzburg, and are famous for this cake. So again, you gotta try it. You gotta go, right? You gotta try it. It's a very dense chocolatey cake, but it is fantastic, and I love doing that too. So if you were to visit Salzburg, my main recommendation is get a hotel somewhere in the old city on either side of the river. There is a section of the old city a little bit on one side of the river, and then there's the side where the fortress is. That's the main part of the old city. Don't get a hotel near the train station. The train station is actually fairly far from the old city, and all you're going to be doing is just walking all the way to the old city, hang out in the old city, and then if you wanted to head back to the hotel, you have to get all the way back. Luckily, my hotel was in the old city. Didn't regret it for a minute. Glad I paid sort of an extra bit to stay somewhere close to the old city, because it just made it so much easier to roam around and see everything. I didn't basically leave the old sections of Salzburg. Why? Why are you going to go out to, just see some regular old buildings and stuff? Instead, just stayed in the old city or walked along the sides of the river. That was a very popular activity that everyone was doing, whether jogging or sitting on the shore of the river or whatever. So I spent a grand total of 4 nights in Salzburg. That was about enough for me, but had a wonderful time. Lovely city. Definitely something you should put on your list if you ever think of going. Then from Salzburg, I went to a small village about 80 kilometers away called Hallstatt. Now, you might not be familiar with it, at least its name, but you might have seen pictures of it, because on your laptop, when you leave your laptop for a bit and then a picture of, just some beautiful place just kind of appears. Well, they have a picture of Hallstatt on there, and it is beautiful. And it was from that seeing it on the laptop and kind of going, oh, where is this? Oh, it's in Austria. And then realizing it was actually only 80 kilometers away from Salzburg. I'm like, okay, I got to go there. I had looked it up, and apparently it's a small village of maybe 1,000 people. but it is now very big on the tourist map, so to speak. And tons of bus tours and day trippers go to the village. So the village can have 10 to 20,000 tourists a day. At its peak, maybe even more, crowding into this small village, all to take pictures and things. So I decided I would stay there 2 nights, because then you get to see the village without all the tourists, because the bus tours all leave like by about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then the village gets a lot quieter. And despite it being 80 kilometers away from Salzburg, it is actually a bit of a journey to get there. You have to take a bus to a train station, then take a train to the Hallstatt train station, which isn't in the village, it's across the lake from the village. But they have ferries that meet the train. So as soon as the train appears, the ferry is there, which will ferry you across to the village. So you basically have to take a bus, a train, and a ferry to get to the village. But looking it up on the internet, it's the best way to do it, because of course the views of the village from the lake as you're going up on the ferry are beautiful. Whereas if you drive to Hallstatt, you can drive straight there if you have a rental car or whatever. There are parking lots outside the village. They don't allow cars to drive through the village. So otherwise, you just kind of drive up and you park and then you go to the village, but you don't get the scenic view entering the village. So I did that. You're just going to see lots of pictures of the village that I took. When it got dark and the tourists had all left, I didn't realize just how quiet the village would get. Like, everything shuts down. Like at 6 o'clock, 90% of the restaurants, the cafes, all of it, they're just boom, shut, we're done. And so suddenly you're just kind of walking along this semi-abandoned village with, like, I think a couple of the hotels, their restaurants were open till about 9. And I found one restaurant a little bit outside the main part of the village that was open a bit later. But other than that, like, that was it. It was great though to tour around and see everything. Unlike Salzburg, there were 2 churches in the village. One was Lutheran and one was Catholic. And again, very nice to visit these. The Catholic church had a crypt that you had to pay to get into, and then you get in and it's just one room, but it's like piles of skulls that people had painted designs on, and also the names of the owner of the skull and like when they died and stuff. It's just, I don't know why many Catholic churches and organizations do this kind of thing. There's another example in Rome at the Capuchin crypt where they're taking all the people's bones and they're making decorative like wall decorations and stuff out of it. And here I am again, another crypt, this time painted skulls with the person's name on it. What? Like, so when Jesus comes back, the dead rise, someone's gonna be like, oh, where's my skull? Oh, here it is. Oh, nice of them to label it for me. I don't know. It's just kind of weird entering a room with hundreds of skulls on a shelf, all painted with names on it and stuff. And you're just kind of, okay, this is a little creepy, but all right, whatever. Interesting to see, I guess. Another thing about Hallstatt is in the mountain above it is a salt mine. And this was actually the main reason why the village was there, because miners used to live there back when when the mine was in operation. I was about to say back when the mine was in operation, but it is still in operation to this day. It is, thanks to archaeological evidence, the oldest salt mine in the world. They have found evidence going back 5,000 years of people mining salt from this thing. Now, you can take a gondola up to the top of the mountain where the salt mine is. Definitely recommend you do that. Staying in Hallstatt made it very helpful, because then I could go straight to the gondola when it opened, which was 9 in the morning, well before most of the bus tours get there and it gets really crowded. So it was very easy. You're there at 9, you walk in, first car up, went over to the salt mine. They offer fantastic tour of the mine. It was actually really cool. I'm glad I did it. And again, I think there was like maybe 12 of us, and the guide was saying, you know, in peak times, he'll be leading tour groups of like 70 plus people. But here's just a dozen of us, very easy. And then there's restaurants and cafes also up on the mountainside with a fantastic view of the valley below. And so, of course, you know, you just have a coffee or whatever there, maybe have yourself apple strudel, that's a popular thing to eat, and you know, just take a lot of pictures of the view before you head back down. Had you been day tripping, you'd have probably arrived in Hallstatt, who knows, 10 o'clock, 10:30, 11, and then the crowds would have all been there, and it would have been a lot more annoying to do it. Whereas instead, I just went up to the mine, toured around, had a snack, came back down, went to my hotel room, and then I, of course, didn't realize this was happening. There was some kind of like race going on in the town, and the town square, and my room overlooked the square, was where the finish line was. And so they were having like a small party. They were basically having a beer garden. They had tables set up where they had a brass band, you know, with the tubas and everything, all sitting there playing alpine music, and of course, beer and bratwurst with sauerkraut. And so I'm like, well, there we are, there's lunch. So you headed out and you just got your bratwurst and sauerkraut and a big thing of beer and listened to a brass band with tubas while you sat at tables and chatted with whoever was there. I had a nice chat with an American couple who happened to be touring in the area and were day tripping from Salzburg before heading on to Vienna, I believe. And it was just a really nice thing to do. I had no idea this was happening in the town. And so it was great that I did stay the 2 nights. But if you do want to do that, you might want to keep some snacks or something to eat handy, because in the evening, the town shuts down. It shuts down. On the bright side, you can take lots of lovely pictures with the sun setting and so forth, and you're not constantly bumping into tourists and influencers and whatever, all doing the same thing. Because at key photo spots in that village at peak times, there can be dozens and dozens of people there all trying to take photos. Like the village gets really crowded. I mean, this was April. This wasn't even summer, so I'd hate to see what it would be like in the summer. I got my Hallstatt tourist hat there. It's my souvenir from the trip. As you know, I like caps. And I really enjoyed seeing the village. Definitely worth it. Put it on your list if you're going to Salzburg or just Western Austria in general. It's fantastic. And so I highly recommend it. From there, I went on to Germany, but okay, this video has gotten way too long as usual, me just blabbing on about things. So I'll stop it here just as an Austria video. I will then do a video of what I got up to when I was in Bavaria, which was also pretty cool and interesting. I mean, overall, I had a great trip. So I'll leave it there. Had a great time. Hope you're all having a nice time. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.